This is about humans dreaming together.
About humans supporting each other on our journeys.
It's about the science and the art behind making our dream lives a reality.
To the students of life,
the young and the curious,
the dreamers and the doers,
to those who crave to be a strong individual
and want to be part of something bigger than themselves. Welcome.
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 Welcome to the Dreamology podcast. Welcome, everyone, to the Dreamology podcast. Dreamology is the study of the art and the science behind making our dream lives a reality. And here we are focused on giving you the mindset, tools, and strategies for making daily progress towards your dreams, no matter where you are in your journey. My name is Tim Bishop, and I'm the co-founder of the Dreamers Initiative. I'm a student of life, and I'm a life conversation junkie who is on a mission to identify how to truly live the dream life and help you do the same. Our guests on this show include best-selling authors, neuroscientists, entrepreneurs, and dream chasers around the world who share their knowledge, greatest stories, and life lessons with us. Before we dig in, I want to mention this podcast is brought to us by the Dreamers Initiative, which is a personal development community that is on a mission to help Gen Z and millennials and young individuals out in the world awaken their dream life and make them a reality. We believe that humans are stronger together and that together we can accomplish anything. So, let's get started on today's episode. Today's guest that I have the honor of introducing is Jess Lipman. Jess is a mindfulness coach, and on this interview, we delve into all sorts of topics from her personal experience with mindfulness to her addiction recovery journey and to her experiences working for big-name personal development gurus like Brendon Burchard and Jim Kwik. And we really talk mostly about, though, the positive effects of mindfulness and how it can really help you develop concentration, clarity around your sensory emotions, and equanimity in your life, which means being the calm in the storm. You know, mindfulness is really a way that we can be in the present moment, no matter what is going on in our life. And it gives an opportunity to, disconnect from the world of technology and really reconnect with ourselves. And really my biggest takeaway from this conversation is that, it's really a gift you're giving yourself, to give yourself time to sit and to deconstruct your inner self, but it's also a gift you're giving to others, because the deeper you go within yourself, the more you'll be called to serve to others. And so it's truly a beautiful experience. And so without further ado, here is Jess. Jess, thank you for joining us here today. We're really excited to have you. Do you want to give people just a little bit of an introduction as to what you do, a little Spark Notes version before we dive into the conversation?
Sure. And thank you so much for having me. I'm really stoked to be here and to talk to you. So I am a mindfulness coach, and I help people achieve their goals across different areas of their life, whether it's personal relationships, their relationship with themselves, their business, their passions, what their purpose is on this planet. And I help them achieve those goals using mindfulness strategies. So for me, I've learned that it's all about leveraging specific attentional skills and mindset strategies to help people repattern themselves and create the life that they ultimately want. I also am a marketing consultant for personal development trainers and companies, and specifically in the areas of mindfulness, wellness, the healing arts, positive psychology, and social impact. And so I help thought leaders and healers get their message out to the world and really amplify it and really live into their purpose strategically.
Sweet. Well, Thank you for that intro. It's pretty cool work that you're doing.
I love it. It's really beautiful what I get to do every day.
Yeah, it is. And so I know that you're coming straight off of something exciting, so I want to dive into that right away, because I know you just did a 2-week, your meditation retreat or mindfulness retreat? What's the official name that we're going with?
It's a 2-week meditation retreat, and it was 15 days. It's the longest retreat I've done yet. Okay,
well, you know that I am sold on the idea of it, but for people out there who are like, why the hell would you do a 15-day meditation retreat? Give some people a little bit of insight as to like why you do these and what kind of happens in these 15 days.
Mm. Um, why I do these. Retreat is a really special time that I gift to myself, and also it really feels like a gift to the people that I get to work with and the people around me. And it's really sacred time where you get to be in silence and really dive into mindfulness strategies. That's the type of retreat I've been doing, and it's just really powerful what happens when you give yourself that kind of extended time and space to go inward and to dissect the senses, because we live in such a saturated um, world where there's a lot of information coming at us all the time. There's a lot of demand. There's a lot of motivations and intentions that are projected onto us. And our sense of self gets really coagulated and fixed sometimes. And sometimes that can feel really like a trap almost. It's like I feel trapped by my life or not. And so retreat time is actually like, it's just a great space to go deep um and to allow whatever needs to arise and to really hold it with equanimity, with like, neutral kind focus, and not really push it away or crave it, and to just like really practice observing sensory experience and yeah, and getting closer to source.
Yeah. It's been on my bucket list for a while. I really want to go try one of these. What does like a common day look like? Is there a general structure, a flow? What happens on a day in the life of one of these retreats?
So every day is basically the same. It's you rise at 5:30 a.m. or no, there's a bell. So there's a bell ringer who rings the bell at 5 a.m. and that just indicates like it's time to wake up. And then 5:30 to 6 a.m. is chanting. So we all gather in the Zendo, which is the meditation hall. And when you show up to retreat, you like set up your sitting materials in one spot, and so that's your spot for the retreat basically. So this retreat actually, there's like rooms like in this corridor, like outdoor corridor, and we each have our own room, and I had a roommate. So we wake up, you like walk over, and the Zendo is like right in front. And yeah, we chant 5:30 to 6. We then from 6 to 7 we sit, so silent meditation. 7 to 7:45 is movement, optional, or you can meditate. So typically from 7 to 7:45 I would go and do yoga. And then from 7:45 to 8:30 is another silent sit. 8:30 to 9:30 is breakfast and resting. And breakfast, all meals are silent as well. And 9:30 till about 11 is guided instruction with our teacher, who's Shinzen Young. So from 9:30 to 11, he'll guide a meditation using one of the techniques in his system, Unified Mindfulness. And then so we sit while he's guiding, and then usually integrated into that at the end is like some kind of movement meditation. So we'd go outside for 20 minutes and walk or do something with technique. And then he does ask me anything sessions every day. So it's like 11:15 till 12:15. You can ask him anything. So we gather in this room, and yeah, you could ask him anything about anything. It could be about mindfulness. It could be about science. He likes talking about science a lot. Anything you want. It's kind of a free for all. And then we have our break until about 3 p.m. Oh no, sorry. Then we meditate again. There's another silent sit. I forgot about that. 12:30 to 1. Then 1 to 3 is rest and lunch. And basically 3 to 6 are different sits. So 3 to 3:30 is a sit, 3:30 to 4:15 is a sit. And then 4:30 to 6 is the longest sit of the day. And that's where most people go to the 4:30 to 6 sit, and because Shinzen will sit in that one. And then in the last 15 minutes of that session, so at 5:45, he'll guide us. He'll do guided meditation using nurture positivity, which is one of his quadrants. Then we have dinner break, come back, another sit, 7:15 to 7:45. Then Dharma talk, 7:45 till 9. And then a sit, 9:15 till 10. And that's the last sit of the day.
Wow.
Unless you do yaza, which is at 10, you could sit through the night if you want. But I don't think there were 2 yazas on my retreat, so I actually didn't attend them. But you basically meditate through the night. That's what yaza is.
Wow. What a day. Holy crap. That
sounds like a lot. And
yeah.
It gets pretty busy. It sounds like you're doing a lot of nothing, but there's not much time to do anything else. So if you need to do other things, like you kind of need to schedule it in. And one of those other things for me, for sure, like I had to do yoga like at least twice a day. Because sitting like for that long, really, if you're not stretching and stuff, at least for me, it gets really challenging on my body. And so I need to get into motion. And I did some hikes too. So there's like an ocean nearby. It's in Southern California near San Pedro. And so I would like walk to the ocean view and walk back and like get some kind of cardio in too.
Yeah.
But yeah, you kind of need some of that stuff.
Yeah.
Intermixed.
Right.
So.
Oh, what a beautiful experience. I mean, how often in life, yeah, to your point, you just get you sit and you just get to be. And it almost feels like you just get to be. You don't have to, I mean, you're doing things. You don't have this to-do list. You don't have things on your mind. It's just like, you're just existing and being there in that. That sounds like such a beautiful experience.
It's a cool thing to experience. And there's like 30 people there, or maybe a little bit more, but you're all silent. You don't really know anyone. Like some people know each other from going on retreat for a long time, but oftentimes you don't know the people that you're sharing space with. And it's really respectful. It's seen as a sign of respect to respect other people's silence. And that even means making eye contact. Like you don't really make eye contact on retreat either. And the idea around that is like, when you give yourself that kind of space, the simplicity of a retreat, the simple schedule is actually really strategic. It's meant to allow you to create the conditions so that you can have to go really deep and to have like insight arise and to go deep with your practice. So the conditions are all really strategic in that way. And even not connecting with other people is also part of like, I think it's part of the idea of like, when you actually talk to people, a self needs to arise in order to communicate. So if a self is arising regularly on a retreat, then it's hard to, it just makes dissolving the self like harder, I think.
Is that weird at first to not talk to anybody? Does it feel like it's almost instinct, or is it just kind of just the norm?
I love it. I actually really love it, but I'm also like, I think I'm an ambivert, but there's a lot of introvert in me. So I actually get a lot of relief from being in social situations where there's no talking.
Huh. Cool. Okay. Well, I know there's a backstory with everybody's life, but I'm curious how you even got into the practice of mindfulness, because I assume you didn't just start with, the 2-week retreat. I know there's a big backstory here, but can you take us back to how you even started going on this personal journey of mindfulness? And now it's, even led into your career. But right. Can you take us back to the origin of where was the birthplace of all this?
Sure. I went to Rutgers University for undergrad. And when I was, I think 21, let's say, there was like this group of people sitting on the lawn at college. and meeting to do Zen meditation, and it was silent. And my friend Elena, she invited me to go, and so we sat, and the practice actually really resonated with me. And I don't even know why or how. Like the early days it's kind of unclear to me why I was so drawn to meditation. I've been getting more and more clear actually as to why. At this last retreat, I got pretty clear on like, why am I so attracted to mindfulness? But I'll share that in a moment. And so from there, then my friend also happened to be a Quaker. And so Quakers, if you're unfamiliar with the way that spiritual community operates, a lot of Quaker meetings are silent. So it's an hour where you sit in silence, and the idea is that you allow the spirit or like higher power to access you directly through silence. And so I was really drawn to that because I love the silence and sitting and meditating. And so I got to explore meditation in that kind of community environment. And then I found Tara Brach around the same time. So Tara Brach is she's a Buddhist psychologist, and she's had a podcast for decades now. But I found her podcast, and in my early 20s, like same time, 21, and I would listen to her guided meditations and Dharma talks and do a practice at home. So I sat and did guided meditation for years actually. And that was like from age 21 until about age 26. And then when I moved to Los Angeles, I went to grad school at USC School of Cinematic Arts, and I have a master's in critical studies. And so when I arrived in LA, my roommate invited me to this meetup. It's a drop-in meditation class. And I was like, oh yeah, let's go. I'm really interested. And it's actually with one of my old teachers, Jessica Graham, who was actually on the retreat I just went on.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we got to sit retreat together for the first time, which was really like special.
Yeah.
So I used to sit in her drop-in class on and off for years. I lived in LA for 4.5 years. And I think I sat with her regularly pretty much for about 3 of those years. And that's actually when I started deep in my practice, is when I found community to sit with. And she introduced me to Unified Mindfulness System. And at the time I didn't really know that, but that's when I really got introduced to Shinzen Young's work. And so sitting with her, and then my practice got even deeper once I started to sit with George Haas, who is the founder of Metta Group. And I sat with him for the last 6 months of my time in Los Angeles before I moved to Portland. And that's when I really learned a lot more about Buddhism. And he also is a student of Shinzen Young. And so he integrates Shinzen's techniques with attachment repair techniques. And so I've gone through a lot of his curriculum too. And so now I have that in my toolkit, like using mindfulness strategies and meditation to heal attachment disorders. And now I moved to Portland. I went on my first retreat in 2017. So when I was like, I think 31. Okay. And yeah, so my first retreat was probably a decade after I was introduced to the practice. Okay. And there's a few reasons for that. One of them was like, I didn't have the funds to go on like a retreat with the teacher I wanted to go with. Mm-hmm. So there was that. There are plenty of 10-day free retreats. Like, so that was, I don't know if that was like a real barrier, but it felt like one for me. Yeah. And, maybe I didn't have the time. Maybe I thought I didn't have the time to do it, because taking 10 to 15 days is significant. Especially if you decide to go offline completely. It's like, even when you go on vacation to like the Caribbean or something, a lot of people don't go offline. They're still on their phones, they're still Instagramming, they're taking photos. Like when I go on retreat, I choose to turn off all my devices and really unplug. And that is one of the coolest parts of a retreat, is unplugging. And in our world where it's becoming everyone's really cognizant now about their craving and addiction to technology and to social media. When you get to go on a retreat, you really are just given this opportunity to unplug and really realize your relationship, not only with technology, but with yourself and with the real environment, and how cathartic and how healing it is to actually be in the world instead of being plugged into these virtual spaces.
Wow, that's powerful. Yeah. That's very powerful. So you said on this most recent one, you started to get like even a deeper understanding of why you even practice this. Is that what you had mentioned?
Oh yeah. So
I'm curious, like what those realizations were.
Well, for me, and this is really specific to me, and this is actually, there's a lot of reasons I practice. But something that came to mind for me was that, like, why am I so interested in mindfulness? Beyond the wellness and health benefits that I get, it's because I'm actually into deconstructing things. And so I told you I have a master's in critical studies. So everything I did in grad school, my job was to deconstruct media. So I deconstruct television, film, digital stuff like the internet. So my whole thing there is like, I like to dissect and come to understand the components of an object. And for a long time, that really feels like it was my purpose. And in a lot of ways, it still is a huge part of who I am. But then my career shifted after grad school. And now I'm really going into mindfulness, and not just in a personal way, but I'm serving from that place as well now. And what I found is like mindfulness is actually, it's deconstruction. Like you're deconstructing the senses, and you're coming to know each piece really well and the different flavors of what's possible. And it's a deconstruction of consciousness, essentially, and the inner system, and coming to really see the world through these new lenses after purifying consciousness and deconstructing the senses. So that became really clear to me, is like, actually, these two things are not so different after all for me.
Same kind of skill sets and thought processes going on.
Yeah. And so that was really meaningful. That insight on retreat was so meaningful, because I have been curious about like, what is it about mindfulness that is drawing me so much? And now I've really kind of uncovered, like, it's the process that you enact in the practice that, like, it's an investigation of an object, and the object is the self. The object is consciousness and the inner system's workings. And so now that's my new venture in life. It's not media, it's the inner system. It's the human body and mind.
Right. And so that's obviously a very compelling argument for trying mindfulness as it is. But you mentioned the health and wellness argument. But for people, maybe listen to this who don't even know a lot about that argument, can you give a brief summary of just the basic like health benefits and science behind why mindfulness is something that is worth practicing?
Yeah. So I think a lot of people, and probably a lot of listeners, might struggle with like anxiety or fear or anger. Different emotions arise, and every moment of every day we are constantly regulating those emotions, whether we actually know we are or not. Like every moment of every day you are regulating, and the ways we regulate are like, if you turn on Netflix, that might be a way you're emotionally regulating and not even really conscious that you're doing it. Or when you go out and like be social with friends, you're regulating your present time moments and emotions. And so the practice of mindfulness really allows us to kind of wake up to that and really get clear on like what's motivating the actions that we're taking in our lives. And then you get some space there to actually choose how you want to act in the world. And mindfulness gives you space between the reaction arising and then the response you can take. And that's really where that's where liberation and freedom lives, is in that space between reaction and response. And mindfulness allows you to develop the concentration, clarity, sensory clarity, and equanimity to really be with every moment that arises, regardless of its quality, whether it's really joyous and life-giving, or if it's really challenging and uncomfortable and painful, whether it's physical or emotional pain. When you practice these techniques, they are the techniques that actually allow you to be with everything that arises. And the reason why that's important is because when you have complete experiences, your contentment actually increases, even if the complete experience is of pain. So that's profound, because I think a lot of people actually run away from pain, or in a lot of different ways, whether it's emotional pain or just emotions in general. Some people can't even hold emotion, so they run away from it. And there's aversion, or they crave something else, the addiction. It could be and manifest into addiction. And so that's where like drug use comes from, or like, even drinking and abusive drinking. It really is your way of either craving something to be different or running away from something. And that's, with mindfulness, you actually are building the toolkits to just be with whatever's arising in the present moment. And process it completely, so that you can then move forward free of that baggage, and you're developing the techniques to be in your life, to be present. So it's really powerful. It's really it's great for sleep. Like it increases quality of sleep and duration. Even it can actually reduce the amount of sleep you need if you have a practice. Oftentimes meditators sleep less than 8 hours a night because you don't really need it. And I think that's more rigorous meditators, but less sleep is required. And it helps with, becoming a skillful visionary or communicator or leader. When you are like leading a team or even on a team, like there are challenges that arise, especially if you work in a startup or in a kind of environment where there's like a lot of change and volatility. And so practicing mindfulness actually allows you to be the steady ship at sea. So if we were thinking about that metaphor, it's like whether it's calm sea and it's sunny and everything's just like equanimous and still, the ship is afloat. And whether there's hurricane winds and rain, like the ship still stays afloat. That's how I would describe equanimity. And that's one of the key things you actually develop with a practice. And it helps you be more heart-centered and really approach people from a place of like compassion, loving kindness, forgiveness. These are really key strategies actually that you can leverage with mindfulness, and tools that you can use to, relieve anxiety with interpersonally. Or, if someone's really irking you at work, instead of it brewing for an hour and keeping you from being productive, you can do 5 minutes of what I would call a micro hit, which is 10 minutes or less of a formal practice where you have your attention on one thing. So you do 5 minutes of a micro hit of forgiveness practice toward that person, and it softens and dissolves that resentment. And then you can get back to work. And so that's just like one example of like, there's some real practical use to this in everyday life. It's not just something that you're not just sitting on your meditation pillow and feeling disconnected from the results that you're generating. You're really shifting the way you orient toward people and yourself in any situation.
Yeah, that's super fascinating to hear you explain it like that. And as you were talking, I'm like thinking about my own experiences, because one thing recently for me has been happening, which I think is really cool, but like my life has a lot of chaos too. I'm starting businesses and doing this and that, and your ship at sea analogy of things can be kind of crazy at times. And I've been noticing this happening where something will happen during the day, and like there'd be some issue or some question or some, what's the next step here sort of challenge. And before bed, I'll sit and do a short like meditation session. And I've just been having like the most profound answers just like come to me. And I'm like, how did that just happen? Like I'm giving myself this space to sit and I'm not even thinking about the business or anything, but then randomly this thought will pop out in my head and I'm like, that's the answer. I'm like, where did that come from? But it's like, I don't know if those two are like fully correlated, but it seems like in my mind that they are, that I'm allowing myself just to kind of sit with things and letting my thoughts come and go. And then like, there's these like profound moments I've been having that are almost exciting. I'm almost like, oh, that was awesome. And I like write it down. But I was coming in my head as you were talking about just kind of the idea of figuring out like in the storm and being able to just sit in it and just being able to kind of like still navigate the ship. So I love that analogy.
Yeah. And what you just described is like spontaneous insight, which is a really common byproduct of mindfulness too.
Okay. Spontaneous insight.
You have more insight. Shinzen would call it the wisdom function, but the wisdom function is activated with different meditation techniques. And basically it's just like deep insight can arise, not just like what you described, like ideas, like creative ideas. It could also be deep insights about your existence, or, you know, like what I had on retreat, like the connection I made about my interest with mindfulness. That those kinds of insights definitely are the byproduct of doing this kind of practice, which is why they sometimes call mindfulness insight practice.
Okay, I've heard that, insight practice.
Yeah,
cool.
Or insight meditation.
Yeah.
Because insights arise when you give yourself, when you practice these tools, these attentional skills, that's what happens.
Okay. And yeah, you mentioned a bit in there. So I'm curious on your personal journey here with this, because you talked a little bit about just the idea of that alcohol and drugs are a way that, and a lot of things, Netflix, you know, ways that we can avoid these things or run away from these emotions we're feeling, because it's easier to just kind of escape them and to push them off. And is it true? I believe last time we talked, you said that you were like completely sober, like 100%. Was that a fact?
Yeah.
Am I saying that right? Was that a choice that was made like after you started doing mindfulness and started to dig into things that you wanted to weed out of your life? Or I'm curious on some of those things that you started doing mindfulness practices and then realized that, okay, I don't need this, or I want this. Can you give me a little behind the scenes on what that experience was like for you personally?
Sure. So I am a recovering addict, and I'm in some recovery programs that support me on my path. And I actually got into recovery and stopped using drugs and alcohol, or any mind or mood altering substances. I joined in 2014, but I didn't get completely sober until July 5th, 2015. So I believe I have 4.5 years.
Yeah, 4.5. That sounds right.
Yeah,
it's good math.
Yeah. I don't keep track much anymore, but I should. So I actually found my way into sober living though, because I needed to. I hit a bottom, and it was one of those like, I don't know who I am kind of things that happened. And it also happened at a time where I was meditating for a few years by that point. So at a really a more serious level, I was using unified mindfulness strategies and really developing awareness at a level that actually made my suffering really apparent. So I was very aware of my suffering, and it was hard to live with it. It was hard to live with myself, and my craving and aversion was so strong, and I had no space between reaction and response. If I had a craving to smoke pot, there was nothing, like there's literally nothing I could do except do it. And I felt kind of I was completely out of control, because I would quit on my own. I'd say, I'm done today. And then like 10 minutes later, it was like craving hits, and I was just, it was just like, I need to go find that thing and do that. And so I was like, I was trapped. I was like a slave to that, to addiction. And I was really uncomfortable with my suffering. So I found recovery, And now I'm actually in a Buddhist recovery program. It's a Buddhist path to recovering from addiction. It's called Recovery Dharma. And it's a beautiful community. It's an international program. And I'm really grateful because we get to meditate. It's one of the core tools that we use to recover from addiction. And we use the Buddhist principles and path, the Eightfold Path, and the Four Noble Truths to support our recovery from addiction, and including substance abuse as well as process addictions.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that and being vulnerable. And yeah, that's obviously a very profound experience with what we were just talking about, which was separating all right, like I know this is a way that I can avoid the suffering or I know it's bad and just diving into that. And now that it's been about a 5-year or so experience for you now. So it's awesome to see that you're 4.5 years past that point. And that's really cool.
Yeah. It feels like light years. I mean, honestly, it feels so much longer. Like I don't even recognize who I was. Like that's how much I've grown and evolved since then. And I do definitely owe it significantly to the practice and then to the personal development work I've done and the mindset strategies. And but I do remember, and this is actually before I got into recovery. I was struggling with a relationship, and I remember using there's a technique called feel in the Unified Mindfulness System. It's where you just like focus on emotional body sensation in the body. So even if there's mental talk, like thinking, or if there's like which is herein, or any like mental image, I would just hold that in background equanimity and not focus on it. And I would just like pour attention, neutral kind awareness onto the emotional sensation arising in the body. And I did that when I had a breakup. And so someone broke up with me. And so in that moment, it was actually one of those times where it's like, that would be the trigger for me to go smoke some pot, because I need to deal with this emotion that's arising. And that's the whole reason I was using drugs in the first place, is to cover up the emotion I'm having. Like, let me fix this fast, because I don't know how to hold it. I don't know how to be with it. And because I knew feel in as a technique, I used it. And so I sat with myself and I just felt sad, and I felt the contours of what the sadness felt in my body, and I watched it move and change, and then I watched it disappear. And that's the practice. Like that's like what mindfulness is. It's like being fully aware and attentive to what's actually arising in the present moment, and seeing it through, letting it be completely there, because it just wants to be seen in order to pass through. And it gets stored in the body, and it clogs up when we turn away from it. When we say, oh, I don't want to deal with it. It's not that it goes away, it stays there. And then things like people get sick from that kind of thing. Like when you hold on to those things rather than processing it. And when you process pain, it purifies your consciousness, and it allows you to reorient to pain in a whole new way. So now today, like when I feel sad, I lean into it, because I know that that's what's actually going to heal me. That's what's going to allow me to relieve that, the negative sensations, and to come into a new way of knowing, and a new way of coping. Really, I don't need drugs today because I have those tools.
Yeah. I'm making a lot of connections right now in my conversations, because I was just talking to a friend the other day who was not a professional mindfulness coach, but he was saying, one of his big things he's been learning about is to just let emotions be. And it's exactly what you just described. And now I'm piecing together what we're talking about. And when he told me which was like, I kept trying to fight things. Like, he works in a hospital, he works 12-hour shifts. They can be hard. You can see children with broken arms or this or that. And it's an emotional experience. And he's like, sometimes I just get sad and I want to fight it, and I want to push it away and ignore it. But from what you're saying, it's like, if you can just learn to embrace what you're feeling in there, it actually becomes easier than to let it go, and to diffuse it or whatever the proper word is that you use. But it's really cool to piece those things together and to, because the logical thing would be to be like, I don't want to feel this sadness. I just want to brush it off and move on. So it's really,
Right.
it's really insightful to hear you talk about this.
Thanks. Yeah. And it's what you said, like, I would say letting go is part of having a complete experience. In order to let go of something, we need to give it like the full attention that it needs in order to like dissolve it and transfer it into something that's productive or something like that. But yeah, like letting go is part of mindfulness. You can let go of things that are irking you if you actually just sit with it and just feel exactly what's arising and watch it like dissolve and dissipate and disappear. It's when we don't, it's when we turn away from it or want to fix it or change it. We're clenching away from it, and that actually makes it bigger and more solidified, more coagulated, more painful. When you pour concentration, clarity, and equanimity onto a sensory experience, it actually relieves the suffering. So when you're in pain, emotional pain, if you actually bring attention to it, when you bring concentration, clarity, and equanimity to it, those are the types of attention you bring to it. It relieves the suffering. That's the whole point of doing it. If you don't want to suffer, be with the experience fully. Be with it compassionately and bring those attentional skills and pour those onto it. So when you concentrate on it, that's just the attention. When you're clear on the sensory experience, I can feel it's pulsing in my chest, or I can feel the tingling, that's sensory experience. And the equanimity piece is really, you're not pushing it away. You're not craving more of it. You're just allowing it to be there, absent of any kind of action from you.
Right. That's super, super interesting. Well, you shared a lot of incredible information about mindfulness. So I'm super stoked about everything we just talked about. But I want to transition a bit into the career aspect of it, because now it is your career. This is something that you obviously personally has meant a lot to you, but now you're helping others with it. So I now wanted to shift into the evolution of how it actually became, what you do as a full-time, company that you run, or however you want to, company, right? The Mindful Nest.
Yes, the Mindful Nest.
Yeah. So what was that evolution like? I know we briefly discussed this before, but refresh me on the evolution of how you got to now having this be what you do.
So for years, I've been doing marketing strategy and consulting, and I've had the privilege to work with thought leaders and personal development trainers and the top 50 companies in personal development and wellness. And I've really gotten a chance to see what the coaching industry is like, and how you can really support people at a really high level on their path to growth and evolution, and also how that really has like a significant impact on a lot of people, especially depending on who you're coaching. Like when you coach executives, for example, like there's a lot of lives that they touch all the time. And so that's really high level service. And so I really got a taste of like, what's that like what's going on there, and what's possible in terms of impact and service. And I personally love consulting and coaching, and it's just something that like I was finally ready to really step into that role in 2019. And let's see, like how it was kind of hard for me to imagine mindfulness as a career, because it just felt like this is like what I do to be okay. This is what I do outside of work. This isn't work. And so I actually got introduced to the fact that, this could be your livelihood. You could just do this for a living. And I learned that from probably going on retreat. When I went on my first Shinzen Young retreat, I was surrounded, a lot of his retreatants are mindfulness teachers and trainers and coaches. And so I was surrounded by all these people who do this for a living. Like they do coaching, consulting, or training. They help people one-on-one and in groups. And so I was like, wow, this is like a thing. This is an industry. It's been an ongoing service that, I mean, there's meditation teachers across time that really support people. And so I was really inspired by that. And that's when my interest peaked about really where I felt like, oh yeah, this is my purpose. And that was actually in 2017. So it's taken me a little time to actually move into this space in a serious way. But my teacher Shinzen always reminds us that the practice is not like it's not just about practicing for yourself at all. Like it's really, you are practicing alone, yes, and you also are really doing this to be of service. Like the deeper you go with your practice, the more you will be called to serve. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but one of the big reasons is that like on the path, like you face challenges as you meditate more and more, and it's really meaningful and important to have teachers and people on the path ahead of you who can mentor and support you along the way. They're kind of like giving you the guideposts to where you're going, because it's kind of like you're practicing and you're in the dark completely. Like you're literally, I mean, oftentimes we have our eyes closed depending on the technique, the practice you use. I mostly meditate with my eyes closed. You're literally in the dark and you're practicing. And like, if you have experiences, it's really powerful to have a teacher who can say, oh, that's what's going on. Like, I know what that's like. And they give you the guideposts to keep growing and going and evolving with your techniques and practice, or else, you know, you could practice for years. And if you don't really have that kind of community support, like you could grow your practice, but you may not have the integration skills to really understand the level of growth you're actually experiencing. You may not know like where you are, like in terms of, you know, your mindfulness practice and where you are with like your, I guess, awareness or relationship with your consciousness. Yeah. So it's really powerful to have teachers and trainers and people who support you along the path. I learn that more and more every time I go on retreat. Like there's my growth like is directly correlated with my relationship with other meditators. Yeah. So I feel really called to that service, and like I'm so grateful to be able to help people like develop a practice and learn about mindfulness and learn about the system I'm passionate about, but also just about other, you know, practices and systems across time that map onto it. And I just think it's a way to liberate like ourselves and have freedom anywhere, anytime. Like truly, it's really, you can feel that liberation in any environment. It's all about like what your attention is focused on. And
yeah, I mean, you know, you made a lot of compelling arguments for giving mindfulness a try in this interview. But I love what you said 2 minutes back or so, which was it's often thought of as a solo journey, but really the more you delve into the inner workings of who you are, the better you go out and you can serve the world based off of who you know you are and who you know you can serve. And that's profound. That's amazing.
Oh yeah. When you're a meditator, like when you practice mindfulness, like you are being of subtle service anytime you're around anyone. Like that's what is happening. Is like your inherent like being is being of service because of the way that you orient toward yourself and the world. I've seen my relationships change with people from across my life, and I definitely attribute it to the practice. You know, like my relationship with my family members is, I would say, really strong because of the work I've done and my mindfulness practice. And so it like emanates. It's not just like, you're not just doing it for you. Like you're doing it and you're being of service when you have a practice. And that actually can help keep a practice. It's really, I don't know about for you, but I find it kind of challenging sometimes to make space for sitting in silence every day.
Yeah, definitely.
For extended periods of time. And the reasons probably are like, we live in a saturated world where there's information all the time, and everything wants our attention. So we're constantly cultivating the skills of craving and aversion, constantly, especially every time you grab your phone to check Instagram for no reason. Like, your body, you are trying to regulate something in the present moment and escape. And so it's kind of like going against the stream to go sit in silence and just be with what's arising. So when you do it for people beyond yourself, when you do it, like if you're a manager, or if you lead teams, or if you're on a team with other human beings, if you want to be a great friend, if you want to be like a family member who's really supportive and who can be there through great times and challenging, like having a regular technique is one of the ultimate ways to serve,
Yeah. Life gets really fascinating when you start to notice these things, because just recently I've been setting like, okay, I have these hour work sessions where I try to put my phone on do not disturb, hour down, I'm locking in, and there'll be random times where I'll just reach for my phone. And before I touch it, I'm like, what am I doing? But it's like, there's something in there that's just like, grab your phone. And you're like, why did I do that? I don't know. Okay. Back to the computer. And it's just like, I don't know what that thing is, but it's like wired into us to just grab it. I don't know. We've just done it so many times, I guess.
Yeah. But when you have a mindfulness practice, you're aware that you're grabbing it, and you get to choose whether or not you're going to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you look at your career now, do you have some goals for where you would like to take this thing, this mindfulness company that you're working on, as you've been doing, reflecting and getting in the stages of looking forward to it? Is there any kind of things on your mind of this would be the ideal operating system, or my ideal level of impact, or things that you want to do with it, or is it just touch as many lives as possible? What's going on in your head?
Wow. Let's see. I don't have a number in mind yet of how many people I want to support, but I want to support as many people as possible to allow them to access freedom on their own terms, using their own body, and to not need anything outside of themselves to be okay, and to like really ultimately like have the highest level of contentment and happiness as possible. That's like really what's possible when you have the practice. And so that at an aerial view is really what I'm passionate about. And I'd love to continue doing one-on-one coaching. I feel really called to that type of service, as well as group coaching and training with mindfulness. And so this year, for example, I'm ramping up and offering workshops and co-leading different trainings with friends and colleagues. And so I'm excited about doing that. And I'm programs chair for the greater region, or Portland region, of Recovery Dharma this year. So I have the opportunity to work on building programming for the recovery community and being a part of that, and finding great guest teachers to come. Maybe there's retreats in my future that I can create containers for people to have deep experiences over longer periods of time. And those are my main kind of goals right now. And I'm still pretty new, and the mindful nest is fairly new. So, but it's really exciting. It's a really exciting time to get into this kind of livelihood, because it just feels really aligned. And I really feel like the world needs this. And I feel like people really want this. People really want to be able to take refuge in their own bodies and their own minds, and to be aware instead of trapped inside of thought or inside of experiences, because they stand to just make a bigger impact in the world if they have that kind of freedom.
Yeah. I think people need it too. So keep doing it.
Yay. Thanks.
Before I let you kind of close it up and talk about kind of where people can learn more about your services and find you, I ask everybody this question, as it's kind of a theme of the podcast, which is, helping people define what an extraordinary life is for themselves. And so I ask everyone in their own life, like, what are kind of the pillars that for your life would you say that you need to, in order to make your life extraordinary, good, whole, complete? What are kind of those components that you feel like you need to have in place in order to carry on with feeling like you're living an authentic life that's true to you?
Oh boy.
It's a big question.
All right. I'll respond by saying this, because I actually say this every day to myself, and it's an intention setting thing, but these words mean a lot to me. And this is like what I want to live into. And so I do my best every day to figure out how to be these things. So I say, grant me honesty, courage, humility, and serenity to face life fully today with love, integrity, and service in my heart. And those are a lot of words, but all of them really mean a lot to me. And I think one of the core pillars right now for me, beyond that statement, is I really believe that self-love and being authentic is actually the foundation of like living your best life. And when we don't have a solid, kind, loving relationship with ourselves, when we don't really know who we are, we don't really have an opportunity to take wise action, because we're not really clear on what we stand for. And so when I say I'm committed to honesty, courage, humility, serenity, love, integrity, service, those are the things I really stand for. And love is like one of the top ones, because I've found in the last few years that like love for other people is really important. And in order to actually share love, you actually have to have it for yourself. The way we see and perceive ourselves and orient toward ourselves is a lot of times the way that we treat other people. And so it's really important to cultivate a relationship with yourself and to really accept and like know who you are. Like, who is that authentic self? And for me, I've been like learning that over the last few years. It's one of the main suffering pieces I was carrying for years, is I avoided knowing who I was because it was too painful. It was, for whatever reason, it didn't feel safe. And I'm at a place now where like, that is my main goal, is like, I do things that light me up. And when something doesn't feel aligned, I get clear on why, and if it needs to be let go of, and then I let go of it so that I can make space for the things that are meaningful and aligned. Because if we live from a place of alignment and authenticity, we are absolutely able to be of service at the highest. And there's no reason why we need to live from that smaller place or do things out of obligation. At some point, you've got to ask yourself, like, what do I love to do? Am I willing to make space to do that? And I think for me, that's actually how I found my way into mindfulness as a service, is because I love it so much. And at some point I was like, I need to give myself permission to go do something I really love doing.
Yeah.
And maybe that's something to ask yourself, it's like, what do I need to give myself permission to do in order to take the step toward my aligned life?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm actually, for your listeners, like anyone who's listening, I'd love to offer 5 free power sessions with me. So that's like basically 60 minutes where we dive deep into, what do you want to expand into at this time of your life? And we'll look at like what you're struggling with, what your challenges are, and then how mindfulness strategies can actually support you in achieving your goals and helping you get to where you really want to go. We'll also take a look at your current mindfulness practice or your meditation practice, if you've got one, and really look at like how exactly are you currently building the attentional skills of concentration, clarity, and equanimity, or not. And we'll get to really look at like where you can start optimizing right away with what you're doing. And so if you're interested, I'd love to invite you to apply for one of those power sessions.
So to apply to one of Jess Power's sessions, you can go to themindfulnest.co/Dreamology. I will put that link in the show notes. I hope you enjoyed this interview with Jess. I mean, the way that she talks about the mind and our human experience and really embracing what we're feeling and not pushing things away, to me is truly incredible. And I thought this information gave me so much value, and I hope it gave you a lot of value as well. And the call to action for this interview is really take advantage of this offer. I mean, it's free. She just had the idea. She said, I want to offer 5 free sessions to your listeners. And she's been coaching me now in my mindfulness practice for about a month and a half. And I've just been able to learn so much about myself and about piecing together who I am and in my experience. And I mean, it's just truly some remarkable practices that you get to do with her, and the loving kindness that she shows you in these experiences that you have with her. It really can't be beat. And so that's my call to action for you. Reach out to her, use the link, sign up for one of these 5 free sessions. And if you don't want to do that, then the other call to action I would just say would be try to start giving yourself 10 minutes a day to sit. Focus on your breath, pay attention to your senses, really start a meditation practice. And there's so many ways you can do that, so many apps that allow you to start doing that in a really easy way. And so, if this interview taught you anything, I would say it's give yourself time to be with yourself, disconnect from technology, and start to connect with yourself. So that is the end of the interview. I hope that you enjoyed it. And together, let's go make those dreams a reality. I will see you next time.